So Jujun hears this and says, okay, well, awesome. I guess I gotta step up the game a little bit. And presses Yang Chen all the harder to the point where the last of the rebellion just falls apart. These guys, upon surrendering, decide that, you know what? The guy who led us to this situation, he's kind of an asshole. Let's just murder the shit out of him and take his head to the other guys so that they don't kill us, too. Because I don't like dying. So, at that point, Yellow Turban Rebellion, dead. Done. Gone. Except one little hiccup. They didn't manage to kill everybody. Naturally, it's kind of hard. Oh, Pablo Picasso in China, whatever. Civ 5. 3 dudes crop up out of the number of. That's nice. 3 dudes crop up out of the myriad people that didn't die. And managed to gather up about 30,000 rebels and basically just start pillaging the countryside again, because when you've got 30,000 dudes, you just kind of do that, I guess. They were obviously upset that the Yellow Turban Rebellion failed and took to calling themselves the Avengers of Master Jiangju, because everybody's got to have a kick-ass name. The court sends out Jujun to take care of that, because, come on, we're tired of this already. Rebellions, we've had too many. Basically what ends up happening is, Jujun shows up, Han Zhang goes out to oppose him, and fails miserably. Even though he's fortified and ready to just be done with everything, and repel invaders, poor leadership and poor planning in general, honestly, ends up putting him in a position where he just starts to starve. Him and his forces start to starve out, and eventually they go ahead and tell their enemy that they want to surrender. They tell Jujun that, okay, you win. We'd rather not starve to death if it's all the same to you. And Jujun tells him to piss off. Obviously, this sparks a little bit of an intellectual discussion between Jujun and our incredibly pious and merciful Liu Bei. Liu Bei obviously arguing for the acceptance of the surrender, with Jujun opposing. They quote some things that happened in the early Han Dynasty, and Jujun makes some pretty strong opposing arguments. But what ends up happening is those horsemen die horribly and painfully from a distance. But what ends up happening is... We'll worry about that in a minute. Liu Bei offers a bit of a counter and proposes a trap where they'll just let the enemy flee from a specific section of wall and then just come in and trounce them. Be done with it. Over with it. Jujun thinks this is a pretty sweet plan, so he goes ahead with it. And this totally works. Right up until the other 2 rebel armies show up and add their forces to the fleeing rebel army and just take the city back within like 10 seconds. They just walk right back in. This happens sometimes in this book. Odd thing to have happen, but, you know, whatever. Ooh, gardens. And back to the next turn. So, end of the city. Jujun decides that he's going to camp 3 miles away from the city and prepare to lay siege to it again, because, as you do. About this time, Sun Jian enters the battlefield. And Sun Jian, he's important enough to have a very vivid description of himself. He's described as having a broad, open face with a body that's alert as a tiger's and a torso like a lofty bear. Supposedly descended from Sun Tzu, the author of... I can't words all of a sudden. the author of The Art of War is who he traces his lineage back to, and he makes a name for himself pretty early on when he's a child. Well, not a child, but like a teenager or whatever. He makes a name for himself pretty early on as an able strategist when he manages to drive off a small army of pirates with just himself, his dad, and some shouting. So that pans out pretty well for him, as it does. Let's do some purchases real quick. Monument's nice. Papermaker's nicer. Monument's nice. Ran out of money. Awesome. Okay, so he's also known for slaying somebody named Zhu Chang, who was a rebel who had taken up the title of Sun Emperor and obtained an army of about 10,000 followers. The reason he shows up just now is because he had some trouble with the logistics of moving his force of about 1,500 veterans from his pretty remote location to the area in which he needed to get for this battle. How he knew the specific location isn't mentioned, but whatever. Zhu Jun welcomes him, naturally, and they lay siege to the city anew, circling it, cutting off all access. And this is where I think they just kind of wanted to make Sun Jian look like a total badass, which it works as far as I'm concerned. You guys can judge for yourself. Basically, what ends up happening is they circle the city, begin sieging it, and Sun Jian leads the charge on top of the enemy walls and proceeds to start fucking shit up. He kills about 20 guys before finally the enemy general is like, oh god, we need to take care of this guy, and personally charges him down. Which may have been one of the dumbest things that he could have possibly done, because he does this on horseback to a man on a wall. So what ends up happening is Sun Jian jumps down, grabs the spear, uses the momentum of that to throw the enemy general Zhao Hong from his horse and steal the guy's horse. Then he just rides around, gutting everything. 20 people on the wall was nothing. He just takes down entire encampments. No, okay, you can restart in a day. Don't restart now. Anyway, sorry, laptop. So Sun Jian basically just sets to work mowing people down in spectacular fashion. And go ahead and get a road set up over there. That's when things start to go pretty well for our heroes here. They this massacre that Sun Jian is in the middle of doing basically drives the rebel forces into Liu Bei, where they basically just surrender on the spot. And Liu Bei, upon seeing them surrender, takes up his bow and assassinates the fuck out of Sun Jiang, who was getting ready to flee. So, enemy forces surrender completely, because at this moment, Zhu Jun shows up. End of the Yellow Turban Rebellion, completely. End of all of them, no more, done, history's over with it. Because of this, Zhu Jun gets promoted to General of the Flying Cavalry, receives governorship of Henan. Sun Jian is appointed Commander of Changsha, with the help of some of his buddies in the government. Liu Bei and his friends, for their valorous conduct, received not a goddamn thing. Nothing. At all. Period. Okay, not period. They get a little bit later. But basically what ends up happening is Liu Bei finds out about this, waits around the capital for a little while, and runs into Zheng Jun, one of the government officials there, and promptly relays to him all the things that have been happening and his personal gripes with the issues at hand. Obviously, Zheng Chun thinks it's a little weird. So, he goes to talk to the Emperor and relays this information to him by way of saying that the Yellow Scars rebelled because the eunuchs sold offices and bartered ranks. And obviously, the only way to make the kingdom tranquil at this point would be to punish the eunuchs, preferably by moida. Now, the Emperor at this time does kind of a 180 and stops being the guy who's pretty chill and not that big of a hassle. A little bit, over fond of the eunuchs, but, pretty much paying attention to the things that happen around him. He stops being that guy and suddenly becomes somebody who looks at these eunuchs in office. It occurs to me that I don't think I explained the concept of eunuchs in Chinese culture last time. If I did, I apologize. If I didn't, quick recap. Eunuchs in Chinese culture were, imperial Chinese culture, were people who had their primary sex organs removed so that they could fulfill things in office that were generally things that people didn't associate with. No, that's wrong. Sorry, hold on. I didn't write this down, so I'm just kind of saying things as I go right now. But eunuchs were basically primary sex organs removed so that they could be, servants to the queen, or the empress, or their concubine, things like that. So they could be trusted in situations where a person with his primary sex organs would probably not be trusted.